Good afternoon, everyone. Let me check if everything is working. So, my presentation is dedicated to a digest of our experience of how we prepared an exhibition called Levitsky Painting Photo Studio. So, in winter 2011 2012, in the state Hermitage, we successfully hosted the exhibition The Epoch of Daguerreotype Early Photography in Russia, which opened the series of photography exhibitions in our museum. So this exhibition, Levitsky Light Painting Photo Studio, which the early Russian photography, which was opened on the 9th of December 2018, became a continuation. For 5 weeks, visitors to familiarize themselves with the stages of the negative and positive process, studying the legacy of one of the most successful photo studios in St. Petersburg, opened in 1849 by the patriarch of the light painting, Sergei Levitsky. So, 87 works were exhibited at the exhibitions, reflecting the most characteristic period in his creativity from 1854 to 1859, and the first steps of wet collodion process in Russia. So the curator of the exhibition was Natalya Avetyan, the PhD in arts, and the restoration of the exhibits was provided by laboratories for scientific restorations of graphics, furniture, and photo materials. So I would like to divide my presentations into three blocks, divided to the retouch of salt prints, the restoration activities, and the design and layout of works for the exhibition. In 1849, Levitsky opened his own photo studio in St. Petersburg at the Nevsky Avenue. So it was the period of the portrait mania, the rapid growth of the rapid development of photo studios, and fierce competition. So, as most of his contemporaries, Sergei Levitsky began with daguerreotypes, which were fashionable and profitable, and also he started with experiments with the negative positive process, which was gaining power. And soon the wet collodion process became the leading process, with printing the image on the paper. So the glass negative image was as clear as on daguerreotype, but the main advantage of this method was the higher sensitivity to light, which allowed to reduce the exposure method. And the success of this work was defined by the quality of chemical components, observing the correct recipes for solutions and preparations of glass and papers. So these were the multiple factors on which, and also the art of filming, which the quality of the final image depended. So the requirements to portraits were the highest. A tiniest spot, bubble, scratch, or dust on the negative glass, or an exposure error could lead to spoiling print. So that's why photographers made their best to avoid these technological defects. So the techniques of an author's retouch and eliminating certain details on the images so became a result on a huge works of the researchers. So at that period of time, photomaterials were not very sensitive to the yellow, orange, and red light. Produced images with distorted tonal coordination between different colors. So photographers knew that aspect, and they gave advice to the people posing for the pictures regarding colors. So, and there were some difficulties with reproducing the tone of the face because the color of human skin contains a big number of red. So that's why there were recommendations on using face powder or using color filters on the cameras, but quite often the problems would be resolved by manipulations at the printing stage and also by retouch of both negative and print. So we can suppose that Levitsky used underexposure at printing a positive to correct the unnatural dark faces on portraits. So then the shade of the face would be lighter, but that also led to lightening the entire photograph. So in that case, modeling half shade would be done by a retouch. And now the work of the retouch artist is evident. But so retouch artists didn't only use the lacquer coating, but used it as an original artistic tool just to add like flesh and make the eyes of the person on the portrait more vivid. So the salt paper lacked the white color, so especially for later which were peculiar for the later photographic papers with the barite layer. So only with the white ink it would be possible to change the contrast. But as photo processes were improved, the number of advocates for the pure photography grew, and Sergei Levitsky was among them. So he repeatedly raised the problem of retouch, and in his work he strived to a pure image by purely photographic means. So the curator of the exhibition, Natalya Avetyan, used the microfilming and photo document of exhibits in reflected line to show how the mastery of the photographer was improved and how the photography evolved in general. So if we would cover the restoration of exhibits and preparing them for the exhibition, this work could be divided into the stage of working with the photo prints on historical frames and with albums and prints. And in most cases, the preservation quality was good. So two photographs in historical frames were exhibited. So restoration was done with frameworks, but the prints were not dismantled. So the leather tears were fixed with glue, and there was an insert added to the wooden frame. So 5 albums were shown, and apart from sheets from the albums, big work on preserving albums as such was done. So the traces of the old glue were removed, and also tears on the sheets were fixed. The album sheets were covered with the mica-coated paper. Also, prints on salt paper and album paper were exhibited at the exhibitions. So on the portrait of the unknown, which was originally inserted into the frame, there were traces of repair. So like blue paper fibers, and also the yellow color of the passport too. And there was the noticeable fading in the colors and high contamination of the surface and fingertips. So the print was slightly deformed, and the edges of the passport too was not cut evenly, but it was historical. So prints on salt paper take a special place in restoration because that type of image is very vulnerable to all mechanical impact. So the from the surface we tried to remove all contaminations with a soft brush, and we used rubber chip to remove surface contaminations from the passport tool. So after all analysis before the restorations for ink migrations and expanding of the glue, we decided to use 4% solution of methyl cellulose, which was applied on the layer of paper with the glue to mechanically remove with the sharp blade. Later on, we used the cotton buds to remove remnants of glue and methyl cellulose. The same 4% solution of methyl cellulose was used to fix the fragments with the tears. After all, they were ironed through the non-woven synthetic material Hermitage. As the photography was partially colored, we decided to dampen it by remote dampening, and later on it was put into the book press between the sheets of filtering cardboard until complete drying. Also on the portrait of children you can see the shape of frame which didn't survive. The albumin print was glued over a cupboard of a smaller size. You can see the craquelure and albumin scratches. So the bottom right angle was torn, and there were fingertips on the passport tool and traces of the glue, and the surface of the print and passport tool was evenly contaminated. So the surface contaminations from the print and passport tool were removed by the rubber chip, and the tear of the print was fixed by a special fragment of Japanese paper. So where the layer with the image was damaged, so the Japanese paper was pasted over the glue of photographic gelatin. Also, we had some prints from the album which used to belong to the Empress Maria Alexandrovna, so which is stored in the collection of the Hermitage. So Levitsky was an author of the family portraits, and the album contained some relatives of the Empress and her friends. So the preservation quality of these prints was good, but there were some historical existence traces with surface contaminations, fading of the image, so folds closer to the edges. And after preservation activities, we removed contaminations on the surface and reinforced edges of the passport too. If you would look at the album, historically, all prints from the album were attached to the passport from Bristol cupboard by Binan, and the decision was made to bear this in mind when we prepared passport for the exhibitions. All photographs were attached to a passport from a cupboard from creamy color. So for fixing and installing the prints in most cases special edge fasteners were used, and the special band Filmoplast P90 was used, and there was a window cut to ensure taking the prints out during the exhibition.
The window was cut out in such a way that to show the opportunities of mounting the prints in Levitsky's photo studio. So that was the wish of the keeper to get this shown in the print. Sometimes they were forced to use other ways of mounting because of individual features of the photo prints, and examples are shown on the slide. Out of 87 works present in the exhibition, there are 32 photos of carte de visite format, and the curator of the display voiced the wish to show the photos fully, so that the display passepartout should not cover the author's one, and that was accounted for by the fact that passepartout of different mounting in different time periods were used, and changes with passepartout took place in the process of the print existence, and also further conditions needed to be made so that during the mounting the print should not touch the glass. And proceeding from the tasks, the following way of mountings was elaborated. Pretty thick Japanese paper was used, and bands 2.5 centimeters in width and 5 centimeters in length were cut out. One of the short edges was made furry like this, and the bands were bound in the shape of L, and the short side length was 1.5 centimeters with this furry edge, and this side was used to glue the band to the return part of the back side of the author's passepartout, and there were special cuts that were made, and the bands were attached on the back side with the Filmoplast P90. On the face side, on top, passepartout of cream cardboard was attached with special holes cut out, and the size of those holes was larger than the prints, and the visitors to the display could clearly see the trends in forming and mounting the photographs of carte de visite format in the 1850s in Levitsky's photo studio. And I would like to say once again that the display was launched on the 9th of December in 2015 in the so-called Hermitage days, and it was really a success. Thank you very much for your attention.